The year is 1938. The United States and the rest of the world are currently suffering from the biggest economic depression in history. At the same time, the world is on the edge of another world war, as Austria has just been annexed by Germany. The world seems to be a dark and disturbing place, and people need hope. Enter Jerry Siegel and Joe Shuster, two Glenville High School students. Both had become best friends and had begun to create comics together. Siegel and Shuster took an interest in sci-fi and folklore-inspired comics, and began to develop a villain based on these very stories. This villain idea didn't last very long, however. One thing did stick though: the name, Superman.
Boys and girls, your attention please. Presenting a new exciting radio program featuring the thrilling adventures of an amazing and incredible personality. Faster than an airplane, more powerful than a locomotive, impervious to bullets. Up in the sky, look, it's a giant bird. It's Superman!
On April 18th, 1938, Action Comics #1 was published, with the now iconic cover of Superman lifting up a car above his head. The magazine was a huge hit. Superman and his stories flew off the shelves, with people really connecting with the real-world stories that were present in the magazine. As time went on, Jerry Siegel and Joe Shuster evolved Superman into a hero who defended the weak. Both authors, who are of Jewish descent, had started to include stories of Superman fighting against Adolf Hitler and the Nazis. Through the magazine's success, Superman was seen as a symbol of hope in a time when hope seemed lost. Even now, Superman remains as one of the main fictional symbols of hope, with multiple comic runs, cartoons, and movies adapting the Man of Steel. Superman became the good that inspires those to fight against the evil in the world. Good and evil. What is good and evil? It's a question everybody has pondered throughout human history. No matter your belief system, in one way or another, you do have some general concept of what good and evil is. Every world religion and other belief systems have tried to understand these very concepts. Christianity is arguably the most adamant in trying to understand the nature of good and evil, and how both of these ideas play out in our own universe. St. Augustine of Hippo, an early church father, theologian, and philosopher, offered an interesting outlook on good and evil. He didn't simply see good and evil as opposing forces, as most do, but rather saw evil as a lack of, or distortion of, what is good. He believed that God, who is literally goodness itself, created everything inherently good. Sin corrupted what was good, such as humans, and made it bad. Now you may wonder, what does this even have to do with a character like Superman? Well, let's think of it like this. If Superman wasn't raised as Clark Kent on a humble Kansas farm and was given strong principles to live by, he most likely would have become that very villain his creators initially envisioned. In fact, most characters in fiction seem to have this sort of pattern. There's always some kind of origin story for everything, or a series of events that leads to a character being the way that they are. Whilst I'm not saying anyone's actions are justified just because of something that occurred in their life, it's something to consider when you look at why anyone does what they do. There's something so intriguing about seeing fictional characters develop, and seeing what makes them become the greatest of heroes or an absolute mad villain. Making a character, whether hero or villain, is no walk in the park, especially one that an audience can remember. But is there some sort of secret formula to this? Well, no. But comic book legend Stan Lee did have a method of his own in writing characters. First off, he would make them relatable. Characters such as Spider-Man are average people, living lives not much different than those of the reader.
I tried to keep it realistic. In order not to make him a typical hero, I made him an average guy who was kind of unpopular. He was sort of a nerd. The kids didn't like him. They thought he was a bookworm. He didn't have enough money. He had to support his old aunt. He was an orphan. He was shy and so forth. And it turned out he was somebody that the readers could relate to. So he became very successful. He became our most popular character.
Next, he would find a way to make them interesting. He would find things that personally interested him, and sort of make an amalgamation of those interests. For example, The Incredible Hulk was based off Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, Frankenstein's monster, and the Wolfman.
Funny thing, I wanted to get I always liked Jekyll and Hyde, and I always liked the Frankenstein movie, the old one with Karloff. And in the Frankenstein movie, I always felt the monster is really the good guy. He didn't want to hurt anybody. All those idiots with torches were always chasing him up and down the hills. So I thought it would be fun to get a monster who was really a good guy. But nobody knew that. And to take a leaf from the Jekyll and Hyde thing, where he could change from a normal person into the monster. And I did the Hulk.
Lastly, he would make them compelling. He looked at problems in the real world, and in a way tried to mirror them in his stories. The X-Men were heroes who fought against mutant prejudice, which is not much different from civil rights activists fighting against discrimination in reality. While his Stan Lee's method isn't definitive, it does give us a good template to follow when looking at some of the best heroes and villains in fiction.
Where's B-127?
Leadership is regarded as an extremely heroic and noble virtue. Without a strong and capable leader, the rest of the group could suffer. However, a leader is not made because of his skill or power. A leader is made by his morals and his willingness to fight for the best interests of those around him, not himself. That's exactly the kind of leader Optimus Prime is.
I am Optimus Prime.
Though Optimus Prime and the rest of the Transformers were initially created as a ploy for Hasbro to make money off the concept of robots turning into cars, Prime has become extremely well liked, not only because of his iconic design, but because of the kind of character he is. Most attribute his character traits to those of a loving father, someone who has the capability to fight for and defend those he cares about, but also the capability to be gentle and loving. Even Peter Cullen, voice actor for Optimus Prime, based the voice on his brother who was a Marine. The day that Cullen was to go and audition for the role of Prime, his brother told him something that made the very character of Optimus Prime.
Don't be a Hollywood hero type with all the BS and all the yelling and screaming and trying to be tough. Be strong enough to be gentle. Well, Kalar, yeah.
We see this characteristic a lot in Prime in the Energon Universe comics by Robert Kirkman. Shortly after the Autobots and Decepticons arrive on Earth, Optimus Prime walks with Spike Witwicky around a forest. Prime takes it all in and admires its beauty. However, unbeknownst to him, he steps on a deer. Prime picks it up, feeling terrible for stepping on it. Spike tries to reassure him that it's okay and that it was simply an accident, but Prime tells himself he should have not have been so ignorant, and acknowledges how fragile Earth is compared to his home planet, Cybertron. It's interesting how a highly trained and skilled warrior like Optimus Prime would actually feel terrible for taking the life of something that we view as insignificant as a deer, especially if you consider that just a page before this panel, Starscream viciously squeezes a human to death with his bare hands. It's quite the contrast of the two ideologies. Starscream sees life on Earth as beneath him, but Prime views it as something to cherish, because life is as fragile as glass. It's an unfortunate reality that we have fewer leaders like Prime and more like Starscream, who are willing to doom their own people just to meet their own interests.
Your plan to destroy them has failed, Master.
Failed. Dr. Doom does not fail.
An authoritarian government can be described as a government with an extreme centralized power. Typically, an authoritarian government is associated with a dictator, or a singular person who has complete control over the country. We have seen this all throughout history. The Roman Empire, the Qin Dynasty, the Soviet Union, the list goes on. In the fictional world of Marvel Comics lies the imaginary sovereign nation of Latveria, which is ruled by one Victor Von Doom.
You are trespassing on Latverian soil. Leave. Now.
Dr. Doom is probably what you would consider the textbook definition of a comic book supervillain, an evil ruler who desires to take over the whole world. But Doom isn't exactly a cartoonishly evil villain, and he isn't the kind of ruler that reaps the benefits of the Latverian people while they suffer. It's quite the opposite, actually. Before Doom ruled Latveria, the country was in a terrible state. The previous ruler had little to no care for Latveria, and the people suffered because of it. However, when Doom arrived to conquer Latveria, he turned it into a utopia. There is no poverty, sickness, and even children are required to get a good night's sleep. That doesn't exactly sound like a bad guy, right? Well, you have to understand that while Doom was able to make Latveria a quite prosperous country, there's one downfall to his character: his ego. For example, he became a god but dropped the title because according to him, gods are beneath him. Dr. Doom also hates Reed Richards with a dying passion. Richards is ultimately deemed as the smartest man alive in the Marvel Universe, and Doom refuses to be considered intellectually inferior. Heck, Doom doesn't even like other variants of himself. You see, Dr. Doom's ultimate goal is to rule the world because he believes he is the only one who can save it.
I now possess the power to end hunger, to abolish disease, to eliminate crime, to establish a perfectly content, perfectly ordered world, all under the benevolence of my iron will.
In one story, Doom had a version of himself that achieved this goal, but there was a key difference. This version of Doom was a humble family man who didn't do things out of his own ego, but rather used his talents to benefit others, but not demanding some sort of thing in return. Dr. Doom was so disgusted with his version of himself that he literally destroyed this whole universe just in spite of this variant. Doom could quite literally become the world's greatest hero with his intellect, but because of his pride, he stumbles in his plans. Pride is often described as the very thing that leads to our downfall. We notice this in Dr. Doom, and especially in real-life dictators who mirror Doom. Though not a single nation from the Allied powers was able to try and convict Adolf Hitler, his downfall was quite literally his pride, because he thought he could take Europe by sheer force, but failed due to weaker strategic planning. Because of how prideful he was, he chose to commit suicide, just so he wouldn't be humiliated before an international court. Dr. Doom is no different. Even if the Fantastic Four can't lock him up, and Doom does have a nation that will continue to worship him despite a loss, Doom will always be too prideful to admit his faults, and he will continue to delay his goals because of that. If Doom were to drop his rivalry with Mr. Fantastic, their friendship could potentially save the world.
Let him go, you filth.
In fiction, there's usually a kind of trope where you have the main protagonist or hero alongside their best friend or sidekick. Typically, they provide comic relief or support to the protagonist. But what exactly happens when you reverse the roles? One where the sidekick becomes the real hero of the story. That is how you get Samwise Gamgee.
Not if I stick you first. Sam!
On the outside, Sam fits the fat and dumb best friend archetype, but that is far from the truth. In The Lord of the Rings, Frodo Baggins is portrayed as our hero. He is given the task to destroy the One Ring, which was created by the Dark Lord and main villain Sauron. However, throughout the story, we see the ring slowly destroy Frodo. The ring continues to call his name on the journey to Mordor, and he nearly falls victim to it multiple times. This is where Samwise Gamgee comes into play. Every time the ring seems to have a grasp on Frodo, Sam snaps him out of it and pushes him to continue his journey. It is especially heartening if you consider that Sam does this for Frodo because he made a promise to Gandalf that he would never leave Frodo's side, even after Frodo departs from the Fellowship of the Ring to go to Mordor alone.
I made a promise, Mr. Frodo. A promise. Don't you leave him, Samwise Gamgee. And I don't mean to. I don't mean to.
However, Sam's arc as the true hero really shines in The Return of the King, when both Sam and Frodo are at the tail end of their journey. At the foot of Mount Doom, the hobbits collapse onto the ground with little to no energy. Sam looks at the pain plaguing his dear friend Frodo and does the unthinkable. He picks up Frodo, puts him on his back like he's a soldier who was just injured.
Then let us be rid of it. Once and for all. Come on, Mr. Frodo. I can't carry it for you. But I can carry you. Come on!
This very scene makes Sam the real hero of The Lord of the Rings. If you still don't believe me, J.R.R. Tolkien, author of The Lord of the Rings, said that Sam was the chief hero of The Lord of the Rings, describing him as a reflection of the soldiers Tolkien fought alongside with in World War I, who were far superior to myself. Without Sam at his side, Frodo would have ultimately succumbed to the ring, and it would have corrupted him, much like the kings of old. Corruption is a dastardly thing. Even someone so nice or good can become corrupted. As mentioned before, St. Augustine believed evil corrupted the good that we find in this world. It's no secret that even the greatest of heroes or even chosen ones can fall to darkness. This is what gave birth to the Sith Lord, Darth Vader. Vader is probably the most iconic villain in all of fiction. You could play an audio of him breathing and everyone could tell you who it is. His mere presence, power, and voice bring shivers down the spines of anyone who face him. But before Vader became the Sith Lord we know today, he was just a young boy named Anakin Skywalker, who lived on the planet Tatooine. After leaving his home planet, he was told he was destined for greatness by his first master, Qui-Gon Jinn. However, the other Jedi Masters were skeptical. This boy could bring balance to the Force, but they could sense in him a great deal of fear and anger. They refused to train him. Not only that, Anakin suffered through tons of trauma. He was a slave, he lost his mother, and he began to doubt himself. That was when Palpatine, or Darth Sidious, came into the equation. He used Anakin's trauma and insecurities as a way to manipulate him. He made Anakin believe that through darkness he could protect those he loves, and his desire for control and power would be fulfilled. Anakin, fueled by rage, destroyed the Jedi and himself, and let the lust of the dark side overtake him, which in turn transformed him into Darth Vader. This transformation is especially highlighted visually by his scars, the same scars that Anakin received in his battle with Obi-Wan on the planet Mustafar, the last part of his downfall. His scars are now the only trace of any of Anakin's history that remains in Vader, or so we think.
He told me enough! He told me you killed him!
No. I am your father.
No. It's not true! That's impossible!
Search your feelings. You know it to be true.
Darth Vader is a ruthless and calculating killer, but when he meets his son, what's left of his humanity begins to crack through his cybernetic suit. It is when Vader finally sees what pain the dark side brings, especially to his son, that Vader makes the sacrifice of his life to save the galaxy and kill the same man who manipulated him into joining the dark side. Darth Vader may be an amazing villain, but his eventual redemption by destroying what we would consider evil itself is a reminder that no one is far from changing their ways and becoming a hero.
What for?
A test. She taught you to hunt, yes?
Yes, sir.
Then show me what you know. I am hungry.
Redemption arcs are probably some of the most satisfying tropes in all of fiction. Seeing our protagonists rise from the ashes and overcome their hardships to reach the end goal inspires us to do the same. But this begs the question, can anyone be redeemed? Even somebody who's considered a monster? It's ultimately a difficult question to answer, and is up to the very person who's committed those atrocities. That's exactly the choice that Kratos, the god of war, made.
I am sorry.
Don't be sorry, Father. Be better.
Kratos is a character with a tragic yet bloody past. In Kratos' younger years, he was a Spartan soldier who gave his life to the previous god of war, Ares. After Ares tricked Kratos into barbarically killing his own family, he snapped. He killed Ares in a fit of rage, but he didn't stop there. The other gods of Olympus also abandoned and manipulated Kratos, especially Zeus, who turned out to be his father.
Zeus, your son has returned! I bring the destruction of Olympus!
Kratos, fueled with rage, destroyed the entire Greek pantheon in an act of vengeance. This, however, did not satisfy Kratos. After killing the Olympians, Kratos left Greece for ancient Scandinavia in the Norse realm of Midgard. There he would meet his new wife, Faye, who gave birth to his son, Atreus. Unfortunately, Faye had died when Atreus was young, and her very death triggered the adventure Atreus and Kratos take in God of War 2018. It is through this adventure, Kratos takes a journey to not only discipline his son, but also himself. Despite being called a monster, and he himself admitting to being a monster, he chooses not to follow that same path.
You cannot change. You will always be a monster.
I know. But I am your monster no longer.
He wants his son to be a better god than himself, which is why Kratos wants Atreus to learn how to control his anger, because it can lead to a path of destruction that he knows all too well. He wants to break the cycle of pain and suffering. This development is especially highlighted in God of War Ragnarok, where Kratos meets Thor, who has a similar past to that of himself, one full of bloodshed. Thor believes that they are both killers, and that's all they'll ever be, but Kratos reminds him that there is a path of redemption.
We don't change. Destroy us!
No more. No more. For the sake of our children, we must be better.
Being better is no simple task. It's a process that does require some suffering and self-reflection. But when we look toward the light at the end of the tunnel, we see ourselves triumphant against our brokenness. Kratos reminds us that no matter how broken we are, there's still hope to continue forward. It just takes us getting up and striving to be better.
Well done here then. So, what now?
Now, I believe I would like to sit here for a while.
There's a saying that goes, never meet your heroes. This could not be more true in our own world. How many times have we seen these supposed squeaky clean celebrities or politicians be exposed as terrible and corrupt people? It's really just another way that the mainstream media or even the government can manipulate us as people, putting our trust in false idols. We see this idea taken to the max in Final Fantasy VII with the one-winged angel, Sephiroth.
This is the key, which grants access to the true counterpart hidden between worlds.
Though most video game antagonists serve to simply be the final boss, Sephiroth is more than just a final boss. He's an absolute monster. Sephiroth was created in a lab through a science experiment performed by Professor Hojo. Hojo injected Genova cells into Sephiroth when he was a fetus, and he was conceived by a woman named Lucretia. While Sephiroth was given unique abilities and was painted as a hero by Shinra, in the face of the soldier program, the Genova cells caused him to go mad. He genuinely believed that Genova, the thing that Hojo got the cells from, was his mother.
The Genova project was approved soon after. A bold initiative to resurrect the long-dead ancients. An initiative that resulted in my conception.
In this act of madness, he burned the small Nibelheim village down and was confronted by soldier Zack Fair. Zack, unfortunately, couldn't defeat Sephiroth, but when Sephiroth wasn't looking, Cloudstrife, a then infantryman, stabbed him from the back and Sephiroth fell to his demise. However, this wasn't the end. Sephiroth still remained essentially as an illusion or hallucination to Cloud, who was not in the greatest mental place 5 years after this initial incident.
I killed you with my own...
Oh, you need not remind me. It was the crowning moment of our time together.
To Sephiroth's advantage, he manipulated Cloud to take the black materia to the northern crater, which is where Sephiroth's body lay, to summon a meteor that would destroy the planet. However, Cloud and the rest of the party defeated Sephiroth with the help of their dead friend Aerith. She summoned Holy to fend off the meteor, and Cloud overcame his demons and beat Sephiroth. Kinda. In the current FF7 canon, Sephiroth is essentially still alive, if you consider Advent Children in the remake series. One thing that is quite noticeable about Sephiroth is how much he resembles Lucifer or Satan. Funnily enough, Sephiroth is called the One-Winged Angel, and his final form closely resembles that of a biblically accurate angel. Satan himself was once an angel, but after rebelling against God, he was slain by Saint Michael the Archangel and cast out of heaven. He was once ruler of the world according to the Bible, but when the Messiah, Jesus Christ, came down from heaven and sacrificed his life on the cross and resurrected 3 days later, Satan no longer remained the ruler of the world, and whilst he still tempts humans to fall into sin, he is prophesied to be destroyed at the second coming of Christ. Sephiroth parallels this story. Once a greatly regarded hero, he betrayed what he stood for, was initially slain, but still existed to tempt and corrupt those around him. He was then defeated by a figure who died but still had the power to destroy him and now only remains as a wanderer in the lifestream, who, based on how the remake series is going, is still attempting to finish the mission he started, but will eventually fall to the same circumstances. Today, the conflict of good and evil still remains a focal point in the real world and especially in the world of fiction. However, there is a change occurring in how we view good and evil as a whole. Now, many people are attempting to blur the line between what is good and evil, abandoning a moral standard and taking the route of whatever say goes. Even beloved franchises that initially present good and evil as a central concept are now being ruined by those who think that good and evil are non-existent concepts. While you could argue that not everything is as black and white as it may seem, we are often reminded that we should never take the route of not believing in any kind of good or evil, because then, how exactly do we determine justice or morality? If there is no good or evil, does that mean that a murderer is justified because he doesn't believe murder is wrong? Of course, most would say no, because that just sounds silly, but it's the logical conclusion you must take. This is why good fictional heroes and villains remind us of this. You could either be a righteous leader who cares for their friends and family and strives for all opportunities to be better, or you could be an egotistical narcissist, corrupted by darkness and the want for power, and eventually fall from grace. We either die as heroes, or we live long enough to see ourselves become the mad villain.